Trains were departing the station in rapid succession. Jack found himself sitting wearily on a bench, his legs aching and exhausted. He had spent the entire day wandering around the city blocks, searching for warm clothes and food. The cold weather was swiftly encroaching, and the harsh realities of the big city showed no mercy to people like him. Throughout the day, Jack had explored the bustling streets and back alleys, keeping an eye out for any discarded items that might be useful. He had managed to find a few tattered pieces of clothing and a couple of half-eaten meals in the trash, but he knew it wouldn't be enough to survive the impending winter months. Desperation was mounting, as the biting cold was only growing more intense with each passing day. Despite the difficulties he faced, Jack continued to search for any opportunity that might present itself. He knew that if he could just gather enough warm clothing and sustenance, he might be able to endure the harsh conditions until the weather turned more favorable. But time was of the essence, and he couldn't afford to waste a single moment in his quest for survival. Jack was homeless, a fact that weighed heavily on him each day. He couldn't really share how and why he had ended up where he was, not because he didn't want to, but because he simply didn't remember anything about his past. It was as if a thick fog had descended upon his memories, shrouding them in mystery and leaving him feeling lost and disconnected from his former life. This lack of knowledge about his past only compounded the struggles he faced in his current situation. Without any recollection of his skills, experiences, or connections, Jack found himself at a significant disadvantage in the unforgiving urban landscape. He was constantly haunted by the unanswered questions that lingered in his mind, making it difficult for him to focus solely on surviving the present. Nevertheless, Jack was determined to push through the challenges and carve out a life for himself, even if it was a difficult one. He knew that the key to his survival was to remain resourceful and resilient, despite the seemingly insurmountable odds he faced. He often found solace in the kindness of strangers who would occasionally offer him food or warm clothing, a brief respite from the harsh reality of his existence. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Jack gradually began to develop a routine. He would wake up early, scour the city for resources, and then seek shelter in the evenings as the temperatures dropped. He was slowly learning how to adapt to his new life, even though his past remained a mystery. Joyce, who appeared to possess an extensive knowledge of the streets, confidently explained the situation to Jack. "What did you expect, man? Do you have any idea how many people like you are out there? The main reason behind their misfortune is the hooch, man." Joyce had seen her fair share of suffering on the streets and had developed a keen understanding of the issues that plagued the homeless community. She was well acquainted with the struggles they faced, and her insights were invaluable to those who found themselves in similar circumstances. "Who?" Jack asked, looking at her with a puzzled expression. Joyce laughed heartily, revealing her front teeth. "Not who, what? You don't know what hooch is? It's booze, cheap liquor. God only knows what it's made of. They probably use some chemicals. People lose their limbs and memory because of it." "Why do you even drink it then?" Jack inquired. Joyce burst into laughter, which soon turned into a coughing fit. "Because good liquor costs good money, and I don't have that kind of money." Jack shrugged his shoulders. "Then just stop drinking altogether." Joyce's laughter came to an abrupt halt. "Are you out of your mind? What do you mean, stop altogether?" Muttering something under her breath, she moved away from Jack. "I can't live with this guy. Something's wrong with him," she thought to herself. Jack honestly couldn't comprehend the situation. If he had lost his memory because of the cheap liquor, why did he even drink it in the first place? The more he thought about it, the more it gave him a headache, and he decided to shift his focus to something else. His name was Jack, at least that's what he believed, because that was the first memory he had. He recalled being shaken by someone and being shouted at. "What the heck are you doing here, Jack? You're blocking my way." He later realized that the name Jack was often used by homeless people as a generic term for someone whose name they didn't know. And that's how he ended up adopting the name Jack for himself. As time passed, Jack became more comfortable with his new identity. Even though he couldn't remember his past or how he had gotten to this point in his life, he felt a sense of belonging among the homeless community. They were his makeshift family, and together they faced the challenges of living on the streets. While the circumstances were far from ideal, Jack was slowly learning to adapt and make the most of the situation. However, the mystery of his past continued to haunt him, and he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever uncover the truth about his former life. With each passing day, he grew more determined to find answers and perhaps a way to reclaim his lost memories. One time, Joyce's so-called colleague, friend, and husband, Charlie, told Jack, "Why do you have to put yourself through this, man? You have to find the cause of the sickness, not just cure it." Charlie was the educated one, and he loved to speak eloquently. As Joyce once mentioned, she would beam with pride during such moments. Charlie was usually reserved, but when he had a drink, he would become philosophical. Jack didn't really grasp what Charlie was saying. "What do you mean, Charlie?" he asked. "I'm saying we need to hit you on the head, and maybe you'll remember everything. At least it's worth a shot. But not remembering anything at all has its own advantages if you ask me." "Like what?" Charlie rolled his eyes. "What if you had murdered someone? What if you're a serial killer and you forgot everything about it? I mean, think about it. Would you want to remember that?" Jack looked at Charlie with fear, trying to determine whether he was joking or not. And then Charlie and Joyce burst out laughing. "You know what? Come with us. It's been a good day today. We can share. Maybe you'll even remember something." Jack tried hard, forcing the foul-tasting liquid down his throat, but then he gave up and said, "I can't. No, I'm sorry." Joyce looked at him intently. "With the lifestyle we lead, you have to drink. Otherwise, you'll go crazy." Charlie supported her sentiment. "You think we drink because we like it?" No. It goes deeper than that." Jack had developed a fondness for watching the trains as they passed by, but he could only catch sight of them early in the morning or late at night. There was something soothing and hypnotic about the rhythmic movement on the trains, the sound of their wheels rolling along the tracks, and the fleeting glimpses of passengers inside the illuminated cars. During the daytime, Jack would often find himself preoccupied with the daily grind of life on the streets, searching for food and shelter. However, in those quiet moments when he could observe the trains, he felt a sense of peace and a temporary escape from the harsh realities of his situation. The trains represented a different world to Jack, one of movement and possibility, and they reminded him that life went on beyond the confines of the streets he was accustomed to. He couldn't help but wonder about the stories and lives of the people inside those trains as they traveled to and from work or embarked on new adventures. As the days turned into weeks, Jack began to seek out those moments of respite more and more, using them to fuel his imagination and to help him maintain a sense of hope amid the challenges he faced. In his mind, the trains became symbols of change and the potential for a better future. As he watched the trains pass by, Jack would dream of one day boarding one of them and leaving his life on the streets behind. Today, Jack wasn't feeling well, and he couldn't pinpoint the reason. He glanced around as if searching for something. They had stayed up late by the bonfire the previous night, and suddenly, Joyce had opened up. "Do you think I'm here because I enjoy it? Who in their right mind would want to be a bum like this? This life is tough, man." After a moment of silence, Joyce continued. "Sometimes you get thoughts, thoughts of ending it all. But life is so much sweeter than nothingness. I mean, I never understood people who said they didn't want to live. They want to live, they just don't know how." The weight of Joyce's words stayed with Jack, and he couldn't help but reflect on the raw honesty she had shared. It was clear that life on the streets had taken its toll on her, as it had on so many others. Her vulnerability in that moment was a stark reminder of the pain and despair that often accompanied a life of hardship and uncertainty. Following that conversation, Jack's perception of Joyce underwent a complete transformation. He hadn't realized that she harbored such thoughts. He had previously regarded her as a woman who was an alcoholic and didn't seem to care much about anything in the world. However, it became apparent that Joyce had experienced deep emotional pain in the past. Jack came to believe that she drank to escape the memories of how she had been betrayed by the people she had loved dearly. As Jack learned more about Joyce's story, he developed a newfound sense of empathy and understanding for her struggles. He realized that life on the streets had forced her to build a tough exterior, masking her vulnerability and emotional turmoil. Like many others, she had turned to alcohol as a means of numbing the pain and finding temporary solace from her haunting memories. This revelation made Jack reconsider his own judgments and assumptions about the people he encountered on the streets. He began to see that everyone had a story, often filled with pain and heartbreak, which had led them to their current circumstances. It became clear that the struggle for survival had pushed many to adopt coping mechanisms like alcoholism in order to endure the harsh realities of life. With this new understanding, Jack felt a deeper connection to those around him and a greater sense of compassion for their shared plight. As he continued to navigate the challenges of life on the streets, he did so with a renewed appreciation for the complexity of the human experience and the commitment to support his makeshift family in any way he could. It was around the time when the last train of the day was scheduled to pass by. Jack knew that once it had gone, there would be no more trains to see until the following day, and he would have to return to the basement. On his way to his dwelling, Jack stopped in front of a shop window. He wasn't interested in the items for sale. He just wanted to catch a glimpse of his own reflection. As he stared back at himself, he saw a tall, skinny man with an overgrown beard and an unkempt hair. The once red hat had faded to a nondescript color, and an oversized winter coat hung loosely on his frame. At that moment, he heard the screech of train wheels as it came to a stop. Then he heard another screech, but this time it was a man shouting from the train. Intrigued by the commotion, Jack turned his attention away from his reflection and focused on the source of the noise. He felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension, unsure of what to expect. As he approached the train, he prepared himself for yet another unexpected encounter in the unpredictable world he had come to know. "Help! Is anybody there? We need a doctor! A woman's giving birth!" But there was nobody on the platform except for Jack. He saw that the woman was lying on the floor of the train, surrounded by a few people who were in a state of panic. One person was leaning in to help her, while another was on the phone trying to get assistance. Before the doors closed, Jack, as if responding to an inner impulse, leaped onto the train. "Let me through." A woman was sitting next to the pregnant woman moved aside. Jack turned to the man who had initially shouted for help. "Can you get someone to help carry her out?" The man glanced at the woman, who looked back at him with fear in her eyes. Jack didn't fully understand what he was doing, but he knew that things needed to be done precisely this way. "Does anyone have any alcohol? Whiskey or something?" The woman handed him a bottle. "Here, I got this for my husband's birthday." Jack knelt down and assessed the pregnant woman. "How far along are you?" 8 months, the woman replied weakly. "Placenta previa. All right." Jack took a moment to think, but he had no other choice. The baby was ready to be born, and the woman screamed. Jack waited for a contraction to pass before saying, "If you want to save the baby, do what I tell you, understand? It's going to be tough. The baby has to turn." Everything happened simultaneously. The baby began to cry. The medics finally arrived and boarded the train, and the loudspeakers announced that the departure would be delayed for a few more minutes so the doctors could attend to the woman. "Ray? Mr. Lewis, is that you?" As Jack turned to look at the woman, shock slowly spread throughout his body. "Jenny, what in the world are you doing here? You were supposed to be in the ward until he gave birth." Jenny managed a small smile. "Yeah, we were discharged. We couldn't cover the costs. What happened to you, Mr. Lewis?" Jack felt a terrible headache squeezing his head from the sides. "I have no idea. I don't know what happened to me, Jenny." The doors opened and medical staff rushed inside, quickly placing the mother and the baby on a gurney. Jack approached the doctor, mumbled something to him, and attempted to leave, but the woman screamed again. "Don't let him go. He's the best gynecologist in the city. Something bad happened to him. Just look at him. I don't think he remembers anything." The doctor looked at Jack suspiciously and said, "The best, you say?" He stared intently into Jack's eyes, and his own eyes widened as recognition suddenly dawned on him. "Mr. Lewis!" Jack clutched his head again. "Don't call me that. I don't know who the heck Mr. Lewis is. Every time I hear the name, my head feels like it's breaking into pieces." The doctor shifted gears. "Let me get you a pill from the ambulance, but you look like you need a stronger painkiller. How about a shot? Just give me anything you've got. I can't take this anymore." The doctor quickly prepared a syringe, and Jack soon felt a wave of relief wash over him. A pleasant sense of relaxation spread throughout his entire body. He initially wanted to get off the ambulance, but then realized he didn't really care where he disembarked. The gentle rocking motion of the ambulance ride lulled him into a comfortable state, easing the tension he had been carrying. As Jack's mind began to clear, he considered the bizarre series of events that had just transpired. He couldn't believe that he had helped deliver a baby, especially given his lack of memory about his past. What's more, he found it strange that he had been recognized as a renowned gynecologist. Was this truly who he had been before his memory loss? The ambulance continued to sway, carrying Jack further away from the life he had been leading on the streets. As the vehicle hummed along, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held for him. Would he regain his memories and rediscover his former life, or would he remain adrift, forever haunted by the mystery of his past? Only time would tell, but for now, Jack allowed himself to savor the moment of peace and tranquility as the ambulance carried him away. When Jack woke up, he didn't recognize his surroundings. Everything around him was white, and he felt disoriented. Was he in the hospital? But he was homeless and unlikely to be in a hospital unless it was an emergency or something similar. Jack moved his limbs to check if everything was okay. He didn't feel any pain. As soon as he sat up, he heard someone speak to him. "Alright, that's good. Don't get up, okay? You can't do that. I'm gonna get the doctor." The little old woman wearing a white gown quickly left the room and returned just as abruptly, accompanied by a large man around 60 years old. "Well, hello there." "Hello? Where am I?" "You're in the hospital." "Why am I here?" "Never thought I'd have to talk to you like this, Ray." "Well, let's meet once again. I'm your uncle, Brad Grayson." "Uncle?" Jack felt the pain returning. The doctor squinted. "Headaches?" Jack nodded in agreement. "Good. That means we still have chances." "What do you mean?" "Well, let's work on getting your memory back." Jack didn't mind the idea of remembering something, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't. In the evening, a young woman visited him. She silently walked into the ward, went to the corner of the room and sat down. She looked at Jack and quietly wept. Unable to bear the sight any longer, Jack asked her, "Excuse me, I don't understand. Can you explain what's going on?" The woman nodded. "My loved one forgot me." Jack sensed that it had something to do with him. He found it hard to believe that a beautiful young woman like her could love him. As it turned out, she did. She began telling him about who and what he was, but everything was in vain. In the morning, she left. Before leaving, she confessed that Jack, or rather Ray, was married to another woman and was preparing to file for a divorce to be with her. She told him that they had known each other since childhood. They had broken up because of a silly argument and reconnected 10 years later. He dozed off, and just at that moment, his uncle, who was also a doctor, rushed into the ward. "Ray, I need your help urgently. A woman has been in an accident. She's pregnant, and I've got nobody. This is a tough one." Jack didn't understand how he could help, but he ran after his uncle anyway. By the end of the operation, which was brilliantly performed and supervised by his uncle, something finally clicked in Jack's head. He looked at Brad Grayson and said, "It's Stephen and Nancy. They had injected me with something." His uncle sighed in relief. "There you go. Now we're getting somewhere. I was dumbfounded when you put everything you'd worked so hard to build in your wife's name. I was like, that can't be Ray." A few hours later, Ray found himself sitting in his uncle's office, engaged in conversation with a man dressed in a sharp suit. He was happily sipping on coffee, a luxury he hadn't enjoyed in such a long time that he had almost forgotten its taste. As he answered questions and shared his thoughts, a realization struck him. If not for that fateful encounter with the train, he would still be out there, wandering the streets and struggling alongside the homeless. The train incident had set off a chain of events that led him back to his former life, and now he had a chance to rebuild and reconnect with the people he had lost along the way. Ray had always regarded Stephen as a close friend, and their bond seemed unbreakable. In fact, had it not been for his betrayal, he might have even become the head doctor at the clinic, working together with his friend to provide excellent health care for their patients. Unfortunately, Stephen's actions had caused their friendship to falter and had deeply impacted Ray's life, altering the path he was on and leading to the difficult circumstances he had found himself in. A month later, Ray found himself face to face with his now former best friend Stephen and his ex-wife Nancy in the courtroom. Nancy vehemently protested, claiming she had truly loved her husband and that Stephen had deceived her with his lies. Throughout the ordeal, Ray found comfort in holding the hand of the one person he had never truly forgotten, the woman who had stood by him, loving and supporting him through it all, his true love and wife. On a sunny day, Joyce and Charlie were at their usual spot near the train station. They were getting ready to search through the trash cans for any food they could find. They hadn't been drinking alcohol lately, as they believed it was hindering them from finding food. A tall man in a suit walked towards them. When he leveled up with them, he suddenly stopped. Joyce looked up at the dark figure of the man and squinted as the sun rays were shining directly at her eyes. Then the man slowly moved to the side, blocking the sun rays. When Joyce saw the face of the man, she didn't recognize him at first, but a second later, her face broke into a wide smile. "Charlie, get up! Look who's here!" Charlie scrambled up to his feet and looked up frowning. Who in their right mind would pay a visit to the homeless? When he saw the face, he said, "I've seen this guy somewhere. Aren't you guy who lost his memory? Yeah, Jack, I think, right?" A year had passed since Ray regained his memory, and life had taken a turn for the better. He parked his car and extended a hand to help Vicky out. She had been his loving wife for over 6 months now, and their bond grew stronger with each passing day. They had found solace in each other's company, making up for lost time and healing from betrayals of the past. Together, they had built a life filled with love, trust, and a shared appreciation for the simple joys of everyday living. Ray had resumed his career as a respected doctor, and Vicky found happiness in her newfound passion for helping others in need. "Honey, let's wait another day or two," she suggested. "Vicky, sweetie, you know you can't do that. Please don't be silly," Ray replied gently. She sighed and walked ahead of him, cradling her pregnant belly with care. Ray followed with a warm smile on his face. His happiness was overwhelming, and he wanted to jump and shout with joy. However, as the new owner of a perinatal center, he knew he had to maintain a professional demeanor. "Good morning, Mr. Lewis. Here's the latest report. You have a staff meeting at 10, said a poised and elegant young woman who was nearly unrecognizable as Joyce. Few people would ever guess that this professionally dressed and confident woman was the same person who had once struggled with her own demons on the streets. Not a trace remained of the Joyce he had once known. Ray had helped her go through rehab and even paid for her training to become a receptionist. Ray didn't regret it one bit, as he was glad to see her thriving and making a new life for herself. Ray felt a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that he had helped someone turn their life around. Seeing Joyce sober and working hard to rebuild her life gave him a sense of joy that he had not felt in a long time. He knew that he had made the right decision to help her, even though it was not an easy road. Over time, Joyce became more than just a receptionist to him. She was a confidant, a friend, and sometimes even a mentor. They talked about everything from the struggles of addiction and recovery to the joys of building a new life. Ray was grateful for her presence in his life and how she had helped him see the world from a different perspective. Joyce, on the other hand, was grateful for Ray's help and support. She knew that she could not have turned her life around without his guidance and generosity. She admired him for his strength and determination to overcome his own struggles and build a successful business. She felt that he was a true inspiration to her and to others who were struggling with addiction. She was a very detail-oriented and diligent woman who always showed great devotion to her husband Charlie. Charlie worked as a driver in the clinic, and together they made a very admirable couple. Their family was considered an exemplary one, with their strong commitment to each other and their dedication to their work. Joyce was always meticulous in her approach to life, ensuring that everything was in order and running smoothly. Her hard work and dedication became the backbone of their family, and she was greatly respected by all those who knew her. Vicky was acting dissatisfied, and Joyce switched her attention to her. "Vicky, what's up with your mood? You're going to see your son tomorrow already. You'll get to squeeze him and talk to him. You can even complain about his dad to him." Vicky looked at her surprised and then burst out laughing. "You know what? That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell him how his dad dragged me here. Honey, I'm ready. Let's give birth." Ray hugged his wife and led her inside. As he walked in, He turned around and gave a thumbs up to Joyce. Joyce smiled, and when they were facing away from her,